Now we return to Jerusalem and go on another trip with Jesus. We go to Jericho, just a few miles away. It was over the road from Jerusalem to Jericho that the traveler went in our Lord's parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, this is a distance of some 28 miles. But in that distance you descend from 2,500 feet above sea level in Jerusalem, with its temperate climate, to 800 feet below sea level in Jericho, with its tropical climate. And it is rugged, bleak terrain all the way. Jericho is an ancient city. This was the city whose walls came tumbling down during Joshua's conquest. Excavations here revealed the remains of an ancient civilization dating back some 6,000 years and more before Christ. Jericho is a city of palm trees, a veritable oasis in a desert. It is nourished by a spring whose waters, the Bible tells us, were made sweet by the prophet Elisha. It is natural, therefore, that the spring should be called Elisha's spring, and women still come here to get water. Jericho is a tropical city, beautiful with flowers and lovely tropical trees. Here are hibiscus and bougainvillea and the jacaranda. Here also is the sycamore tree. It was in this kind of tree that Jesus found Zacchaeus in Jericho, and then went to eat in his house. While we are in Jericho, let us look at another section of the land in which Jesus lived. There is no record of the fact that Jesus ever visited here, but he may have known about it. We go to Qumran, the site of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It is just a short way from Jericho, along the western shore of the Dead Sea. You drive through a rugged wilderness between the Dead Sea and the Judean hills. If you will look closely, you will see camels off in the distance, grazing on this bleak land. Here the Bedouins pitch their tents and live their nomadic life. And here camels move about undisturbed as we drive by. It is a wild, undeveloped region, what the Bible calls a wilderness. It still is. Our destination is this rugged hill, on top of which was built the old Essene community called Qumran. Here dedicated and fanatical Jews lived apart from the world, and they tried to keep the faith alive as they believed it. They lived here from 130 B.C. to 68 A.D. Many of them were copyists of the ancient manuscripts of the Hebrew faith, books that make up our Old Testament. This community was destroyed by the Roman army about 68 A.D., and it was left in ruins. But the Essenes knew that the Romans were coming, and so they stored their precious manuscripts in earthenware jars and hid them in caves. Here they would be safe in the hot, dry climate. Here is cave number 4, the site of one of the most valuable finds. Here were found remains of more than 400 manuscripts in thousands of fragments. These fragments contain parts of every book in the Old Testament except Esther, besides many apocryphal and sectarian documents. You climb down a steep cliff to get into the cave. It is a man-made chamber hewn out of the rugged cliff, but it contained a rich treasure out of the past. Here were found bits of manuscripts such as these. Experts had to solve a very complicated jigsaw puzzle before they could be translated. From the front of the cave you can look out across the gorge to the site of the community. All about is an expanse of bleak, rugged terrain. Here are the ruins of the community with the Dead Sea in the background. There are some who think that the Essenes, the people who lived here, had some influence on the thinking of Jesus. Others feel that their influence on him was negligible. From here we go back to Jerusalem for the closing scenes of Jesus' life. Let us see the city first by night. We look out from the Mount of Olives, and there it lies. Jerusalem. The word means city of peace. But it has had a long record of war and turmoil. However, out of it has come such insight and such history that it has been called Zion, city of our God. Perhaps Jesus saw it something like this, bathed in the early morning light. While some of its architecture is changed and the city has grown well beyond its ancient boundaries, still it was upon this terrain that Jesus looked when he made his way over the Mount of Olives in the early dawn. He spent much of his time teaching in the temple area. This was a very sacred spot. Here, tradition says, Abraham was about to offer his son Isaac as a human sacrifice. And here David bought a threshing floor to be used as an altar. And over the rock of that floor, Solomon built his great temple. What an historic spot this is! Solomon's temple was destroyed almost 600 years before Christ, and it was rebuilt on a smaller scale about 50 years later. Then, just a few years before the time of Jesus, Herod the Great built here a magnificent temple that outshone in splendor even the ancient building of Solomon. It was Herod's temple where Jesus worshipped. For some 3,000 years this has been a sacred place. Today a Muslim mosque, properly called the Dome of the Rock, is here. It was built some 1,250 years ago, and was recently refurbished by funds from all over the Arab world. And so this is a sacred Muslim site, second in importance only to Mecca. But it is sacred also to Jews and to Christians. It was here that Jesus worshipped and taught. At night he walked out of the temple area, through the city gate, across the Kidron Valley, and over the Mount of Olives to the little village of Bethany. Here lived his friends, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. On the walk over the Mount of Olives, Jesus could see the Dead Sea glistening off in the distance. Bethany is a picturesque little village. Here Jesus found rest and understanding in the home of his friends. Its sacred site is an old tomb, which is supposed to be the tomb where Lazarus lay when Jesus called him back from the dead, saying, "Lazarus, come forth." A dark, narrow passageway leads to the tomb, and you need these lighted tapers to illuminate your way. Here also is the Church of St. Lazarus. On an exterior wall is an inscription in both English and German. It speaks to all devout hearts, for it reads, "Today, as in the past, the love of Jesus seeks a refuge, where he is lovingly expected, and where he can find rest. He finds our hearts are filled with distractions, people, work, our own interests. He longs for us to empty our hearts and lovingly receive him." On Thursday night of his last week, Jesus met with his disciples in the upper room, which, according to long-standing tradition, was upon Mount Zion, above the tomb of David. Here he ate the Last Supper with his disciples. This room, part of a church built in 1130 A.D., is now part of a Muslim shrine. From the upper room Jesus went to Gethsemane. The word means oil press. Here among the olive trees he prayed in agony, and here he was betrayed.